Hello, welcome to Daf Yomi Ba'alocha. Today we're learning Siman Tov Tzadi Ches, Sif Dalad, and Sif Hey, page 214. Sif Dalad. Behemoths hayaduos lalon chutz l'tchum. You have animals, and it's known that they live outside the tchum. V'nimtzu bo'er, and they're found in the city b'yom sheni. Now that Yom Sheni actually should read Yom Tov, says the Mishnah Berurah. So on Yom Tov you find these animals in the city, but it's known they normally stay outside the city. And Yoimer said to Shulchan Aruch, I assume Shemon Me'er B'erev Hechnisan. I will tell you that it can be assumed that from the evening, the night before, they actually came into town. They actually stayed just outside the wall of the town, but they were within the Tchum. Mutaris, these animals are permitted. All the more so animals which are shechted in the morning, there's an assumption we can rely on the fact that they were brought before Yom Tov within the Tchum, and that's how come they're shechted this morning. What's the significance if they're outside the Tchum or within the Tchum before Yom Tov? The significance is simple. An animal which is outside the Tchum when Yom Tov comes in may not be shechted on Yom Tov because it's come from a prohibited place. When Yom Tov came in, it was not expected or able to be eaten. However, if the animal was within the Tchum, so then it can be eaten. We've learned this principle before in Sif Gimel. But here we're seeing an additional chiddush, and that is the non-Jew has these animals on Yom Tov. We can assume that, and we know he lives maybe beyond the Tchum. Yeah, and before Yom Tov they weren't in the city. I would have thought that's how it was. Maybe the non-Jew brought it in to the town, to the market, which was in town just this morning. No, we shouldn't assume that's the case. We should assume not like this. The Shemal Shape is very likely. He brought them to town before Yom Tov. Before Yom Tov. Maybe they were just outside the city gates, the city boundary. In the morning, he brought them into the city. And that's the way it would be. A person would bring it the night before to within the Tchum. We can assume that's the case, and therefore these animals are permitted. B'yom Sheni, on the second day, the Yom Tov, it doesn't mean the second day, it means on Yom Tov. Yeah. Assuming animals which are shechted in town on the morning of Yom Tov, we assume that they were brought to town before Yom Tov by the non-Jew. The non-Jew brought them to the market to shech them on Yom Tov morning. From we know we say, for sure he brought them before Yom Tov. Because he doesn't want any delay. When do you think he brought them? In the middle of the night? The night's dark, you can't bring animals. He must have brought them before Yom Tov if he checked them in the morning. Because this is all the Shulchan Aruch's opinion, that although we're not sure if the animal was in or out of the Tchum, we can assume with regards to Tchumin is a Drabanan, we can assume with regards to Tchumin that it was in the city before Yom Tov. Calls mentioned Borolon unless we know otherwise. Because we've written already that the Mechaber actually machma about this in a number of places. Not so simple to say Sofi Tchum Lakula, to say that since we don't know if the animal was within Tchum or not, we should say it's mutter. Avram is not lenient about this. Only when the non-Jew is actually staying in the city of him, if he lives in the city and the animals are always within the city, within the Tchum, within the board boundary of the city, then he's Mekel. But we wouldn't assume a prohibition took place. It came from outside the Tchum. On second day Yom Tov, we don't know when the animal came into Tchum. The question is brought to us on the second day of Yom Tov, so then we can be lenient. The first or second day Yom Tov maybe is not Yom Tov. And additionally, even if it is Yom Tov, maybe the animals were always within the Tchum. But otherwise, it says Moravon, no, Sophic question whether the animals weren't within the Tchum. When Yom Tov came in, the Moravon says we must be strict, not like the Shulchan Aruch. And of course, like we mentioned in Sif Gimel, this whole concern is not an issue of muksa because the animal belongs to a goy. Animal belongs to a goy is not subject to muksa. It's considered always designated for usage, etc. But the concern of the animal being brought chutz l'tchum is the concern of our seat. Shulchan Aruch is mekel. Magen Avraham says you can't be mekel by suffix tchuin, and therefore it's machmeh unless there's another reason to be mekel, like it's Yom Tov Sheni. As the Mishnah just said. Sivei. Egel shenoiled b'Yom Tov. One has a calf that's born on Yom Tov. Says the Shulchan Aruch, mutar l'shachtoi. One can shecht this calf. Im ho'eim emedes la'achila. If the mother was expected to be eaten, so the mother is considered an oichel, an edible mother. The cow is considered an edible cow, and then the egel, the calf, is also considered edible. When Yom Tov came in, the egel was inside the mother was fit to be eaten, and therefore the egel, which was part of the mother, is also considered a food fit to be eaten. And now it's born on Yom Tov, it continues to be fit to be eaten. Provided we know it's completed its term, it's a full-term baby. Says the Haggadah, the Ramah says also, Gamkin, we also have to know, Shehifis al Gabi Karka, we have to have seen the animal walk on the ground, because otherwise it's a concern. If an animal doesn't fulfill these criteria, so that there is a reason to be concerned that perhaps there's an internal injury to this animal. How do you know? And maybe it's internal injury. And the will come out that he will shech this animal, and it's not a viable animal, an animal may not be eaten, and therefore he will shech it for no reason. That says the Ramah from the Rosh Hashanah. We have to be sure to shech this calf. We have to be sure that the calf has not only been full term, but also that it's walked, and therefore we can be assured that it's a healthy animal. If Shabbos and Yom Tov are next to each other, if it was born on one of them, it's still permitted on the other day. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if gotten kovches, the mother is fit to be eaten. Whatever that means, the ozmuta, then it's permitted. We have learned that the Mechaber holds that food item which was designated was expected to be used for different purposes. Muksan Yom Tov, for example, we spoke about fruit which is in an eitza in a storehouse, or we spoke about an animal which is meant to give milk or to give eggs. And the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber holds its muksa, the Ramah is mekel. Different opinions how to make designation over there. But even according to the opinion that holds that these items are muksa, says the Shulchan Aruch, mitam the kivit, this is still mutter in our situation. This calf is still mutter. Mitam, the reason is the kivit, since the mother is suitable to be eaten and expected to be eaten, so the calf was also included in its mother Yom Tov, expected to be eaten. The mother could have been shechted, slaughtered at the beginning of Yom Tov before this calf was born, and we'd eat both. We'd eat both in Yom Tov, and therefore there's no concern of muksa, and the calf is kosher. It can be eaten on Yom Tov. Even if the mother is a from the and the rest ain't a muksa Yom Tov. She's not muksa on Yom Tov. Because when Yom Tov came in, true, she was a treifa, but when Yom Tov came in, she was suitable for dogs. And came in so her egel made it in a muksa, and therefore the calf also isn't muksa. But female we didn't say no. According to the custom of our country, she'ain oisin muksa Yom Tov noilad. It's interesting. Mishnah Berurah here is telling us that we are actually lenient with regard to the muksa in Simon Tov Study Hasif Daled. We hold that food item which although is expected to be used for a different purpose, we hold it's not muksa. Therefore, those examples we mentioned before, food which was put into storage before Yom Tov, an animal which is expected to give milk or expected to give eggs, the Ramah is paskening. The Mishnah Berurah says that we actually makel. In this machlekes, an interesting thing is he says the minhag of our countries is to be lenient with this point. The funny thing is in Simon Tov Study, he doesn't bring this minhag at all. It sounds from there one should be machmer. One has to make certain types of designation. Anyway, the Mishnah Berurah is telling us here with that halacha of muksa we are mekel. Therefore, if you minhag medina seinish ein oisim muksa beyond vela noilad, only a noilad muksa is prohibited. Meaning, if you have a new status of an animal on Yom Tov, it changed. For example, if one has an animal, a piece of meat, which when Yom Tov came in was meat with bones together, which is expected to be eaten by a human. And then the meat came apart from the bones, and the bones not expected to be eaten by a human. No human will just eat the bones, expected to be eaten by a dog. That's called noilet. It's called a reborn item. And such a significant change to the item, then even the Ramah holds such a thing as muksa. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the female I'm going to Medina say, according to the custom of our countries, she'ain oisin muksa beyond a food item which is not muksa, even if it was expected to be used for something else, not for food purpose, but it's not muksa. The only muksa concern is noilad. The Ramah paskins over there. Therefore, in this, if that's the case, even an egel, a calf born on Yontif, even if the mother was not expected to be eaten, the mother was expected to be a mother for other calves. Wasn't expected to. No one was expected to shech the mother, to eat the mother. Nevertheless, the egel is not muksa. The ain't also mission noilad. Okay. But you said that Ramah forbids because of noilad. He holds noilad is a concern of muksa. Oh, but that's this calf is not considered noilad. Why? Wow. The issue of noilad is only when there's a physical change to the item, as well as a status change. This animal, this calf, could have been eaten before it was born and after it was born. The fact it was born is not considered noilad in the muksa sense of the word. And therefore, the Ramah permits muksa and forbids noilad. There's no reason to forbid this calf, even though the mother was expected not to be eaten. Interesting. This exact case of noilad is not noilad because the lady had no physical change to. There's no physical change to the calf. Siv Kach test. The Ramah says that a calf, the Shulchan Aruch says a calf is only mutter when we know it's completed the term. For nowadays we're not experts in this. If you look in your Yodea, it discusses this case. If you have a calf which is born on Yontif, we wouldn't shecht it. Over Shabbos Erev Yontif or on Shabbos before Yontif, Kedim Yom Shmini, before the 8th day, Shemon Nefelu, because maybe it is maybe it's a nefel, maybe it's a type of stillborn. And when you need to wait 7 days, if you have to wait 7 days, in some circumstances you have to wait because we don't know if the months have been completed. If it's a viable birth, the 8th day falls on the first day of Yontif. So then one may say that if the 8th day, which is the day number of days it takes to be sure that this animal is a viable animal, if that only happens on the 8th day of Yontif, well, when the 8th day of Yontif came in, it was still on the 7th day during the Ben Hashmoshes. To also discuss why Ben Hashmoshes. There's a principle that if during Ben Hashmoshes, when Yontif comes in, something can't be eaten, so therefore it's also the whole of Yontif. So perhaps here also, since Ben Yontif came in, it hadn't had a complete 7 days from its birth, and therefore we don't yet know if it's viable. Therefore Ben Hashmoshes is muksa, therefore it's muksa on the 8th day as well. Similarly, if that would happen on Yom Tov Sheni, everyone was keeping Yom Tov Sheni, and the night of Yom Tov Sheni, it's not quite completed the seven Benish Moshes before Yom Tov Sheni, it's not completed the 7 days. Should it be muksa throughout Yom Tov as well? Godim says it should be. The Sefer Shos Yaakov, Matzah permits it. Given the Rav have Lodos Vladim Ali Yoldan, since in general these births are healthy and viable. Definitely it will come. We can assume it's going to become permitted at that night, and therefore it's not considered muksa. Chadoshov. We can only permit the egel, this calf, if it's completed its term. Then Tisha Chadosh Negasa, which is 9 months for a behema which is gasa, but Chamish Ladaka, and 5 months for a behema which is a behema daka. Behema gasa being a larger animal, and behema daka being a more tender, small type of animal. Says the Ramah, over Inan we also need Gam Kain Shehifris, that the animal has actually stepped on the ground. So the days that by doing this, once we see it walking on the ground, we can be rest assured that there's no internal damage which will make the animal treif, because its internal limbs may definitely not squashed at all, have not been squashed during the birth. Otherwise, there's a concern that the animal, if it doesn't walk, there's a concern the animal is not healthy, it's a treifa, and may not be, if it's shechted, may not be eaten, and comes out, therefore it's shechted unnecessarily. Although if it was born during a general weekday, we know if we know it's completed its term, you can shecht it on that day. We're not concerned. Maybe it's a treifa because its limbs became crushed during the birth. We didn't to check any internal injuries. We come up nevertheless. Beyond the Yontav Chashina, we're concerned. Maybe we will see concern of possible trephus in the internal limbs. Is an additional problem of shechting unnecessarily on Yontav, and that doesn't apply during the week. Because of this extra concern, we would want to ensure the animal is healthy before shechting it. The Das Rashal, the Taz, the Marshal, and the Taz say one doesn't need to make sure it walks on the ground. One doesn't need to be concerned. But us enough committed because practically speaking, there's no difference anyway. Why? We don't know when an animal has completed its months. Therefore, practically speaking, we wouldn't eat an egel on Yontav anyway, a calf born on Yontav anyway, because of this reason. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if it was a Shabbos and a Yontav, and the egel was born, let's say, on the first day, one could eat it on the second day being Yontav. After Pishu Yontav, Ein Shabbos Mechined Yontav in the dirt, when we not prepares food on Shabbos for Yontav. Nevertheless, if it's born on Shabbos, one can eat on Yontav. The fact this animal was born on Shabbos is not considered it being prepared on Shabbos for Yontav, which is not allowed. Because as we said before, the calf itself intrinsically was edible before and after the birth. The birth doesn't change its status in that way, and therefore the fact it's born on Shabbos doesn't mean it's sort of been prepared on Shabbos, in which case it could be eaten on Yontav. It was born on Shabbos, which is not a change of physical status, and therefore it can be eaten on the Yontav after Shabbos.